Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Adam Blain, who's a wealth and retirement advisor with AAA Life Solutions, and we'll be talking about tax traps and time bombs. Adam, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be back.
Hey, so I guess the only reminds me of that title. Reminds me of like the only thing guaranteed in life is what horseshoes, death and taxes, things like
taxes,
that.
Yes.
So tax traps and time bombs sounds like quite the topic that we want to cover. So where do you start when you're talking to your clients to start educating them on what they don't see coming around the corner?
Oh, we start talking early and often. Taxes is a mystery, and everybody hates paying taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most people assume that when they retire, they're always going to be in a lower bracket. That's always been the myth, especially around 401ks, right? The whole premise between like a 401k or tax deferred account is that I'm in a higher income tax bracket right now. I can get that deduction by deferring taxes now till later. But oftentimes people don't realize that in retirement, I am more than likely possibly going to be in a higher tax bracket. Why? Is because I'm not working anymore, right? So I lose those work-related deductions. Required minimum distributions that force withdrawal out of those tax-deferred accounts when I don't necessarily want to take them out, but I have to per federal guidelines. Social Security could be taxed. A lot of people don't realize that Social Security, based on how much income I take out, can be taxed. Now, I know that's on the table right now to be voted on in Congress. That could be going away to where they'll tax Social Security, which will help our retirees in this country a lot. Medicare premiums can go up. A lot of people don't realize that I could be taxed. That dreaded word IRMA. A lot of people don't know what IRMA is, but it's basically that Medicare premiums to where if I take out too much money or have too much income, I will pay more for my Medicare to the federal government. And then worst of all, when something called a widow's penalty devastates it as well. Like what happens when my spouse dies? Usually they end up being in a higher tax bracket as well, because the survivor is now filing as a single person with similar income, so they're paying almost 20 to 30% more in taxes than what they were as a joint couple, because they lose deductions, they have the same income. So, I mean, it's a disadvantage to them as well. So
how do you avoid that widow's penalty? That sounds, I don't like to hear the word penalty, and you can't really control when a spouse dies. So what are some ways that you can avoid that?
So it's planning. It comes down to being proactive in that tax planning, to where if you have nothing but tax deferred accounts, maybe start doing some Roth conversions where you cross over that tax bridge, to where you start paying the taxes now, especially while taxes are very favorable right now. We are in the lowest tax rates that we've ever seen in our nation. And it more likely is going to continue for 4 more years, especially if this legislation goes through here in May, is I believe when Congress is voting on it. So if it continues for the next 4 years, maybe it's a favorable time to start moving a lot of that qualified money, pay taxes on it now strategically, and then you let it grow tax-free into the future. Income smoothing, basically it's where we spend income over multiple years to avoid bracket jumps. Again, that's taking strategies to where instead of penny pinching and letting it grow to a big number, maybe we start taking some money now and start living my life. But it comes down to talking to somebody to be able to know that I can actually spend some money. And then withdrawal sequencing, basically where we choose which accounts we want to pull money out of and when. And then knowing what are the consequences of what account I'm taking money out of, what is that going to do to my taxes? So I kind of like putting this analogy out there. It's kind of like thinking of it like steering a car down a winding mountain. Okay. If you know the sharp turns ahead, you can slow down, stay in control. It's kind of what we do with taxes. We build those guardrails in So and you're not surprised by tax spikes or Medicare premium jumps or bracket change after losing a spouse. We're able to strategically and know efficiently think about what our tax is going to do in going into the future. So it's kind of something that
Yeah.
we can kind of plan on and think of.
It kind of gets back to what we said in this series. Just plan. Have a plan. Follow the plan. If you plan for those things and they don't happen, great. You're better off. But if you plan for those things and they do happen, you're prepared. And when I hear the word time bombs, tax time bombs, I think about all these things. It's kind of like you see those movies where it's like the explosions are going off from the right and off the left. What are some of those tax time bombs, and how can you really plan for those?
Yeah. So our tax time bombs it boils down is these tax deferred accounts, these IRAs and 401ks.
Mm-hmm.
We know when it's going to be going off. It's when we are forced with the required minimum distributions at the age of 73. When you turn 73, the government knows that you've turned that age. They're wanting you to start taking money out of those accounts, regardless if the market is up or down, or even if it's favorable to you. They want you to take that out. And I've come across the biggest complaint that I have when retirees come into my office is like, man, these taxes are killing me. It's because they've already reached their requirement distribution age. And they're having to take out that money regardless that they don't even want the money to be pulling out of those accounts. They don't need it. They don't need the income. They're an older generation. They've had pensions. Have their Social Security. They might live off a little bit of income, but they're looking at you start off at, I don't know, was it a little over 4% having to take out of that, and say you had $1 million, that's $40,000 that you weren't planning in income.
Yep.
And that amount grows every year. So by the time you're age 90, almost 70% of your account should have been withdrawn out of those accounts. And that's a lot of money that you weren't planning on necessarily maybe taking out.
One thing that I was thinking when you're describing those required minimum distributions, what if you get to the point where you go, oh, I don't need to take any out this year because I sold my RV and I'm good to go, and so I'm just not going to take the thing out. That could be a big problem, right?
Yeah, that could be a problem as well, because if you do not take those RMDs out when you hit 73, the government will tax you up to 25% of what you should have taken out.
Ooh.
That's a big hit. It used to be 50. So government, was about 4 years ago, I think, reduced that down to 25. So you could be hit with a big penalty. So if you're taking out 25%, that's an extra 10 grand in taxes that you would have had to pay as well as a penalty. So it's not favorable to skip that. Now I've had had a client come in once. She was 84, 85, something like that. And we were sitting down and talking, and she brought up to me one time, is like, what's a required minimum distribution? And I told her what it was, and she's like, oh, I've never paid that before. I don't even know what it was. So we had to
she
pull
was
in some
she was getting
CPAs.
hit with those penalties.
He was gonna, yeah, and at the time it was the 50%. So, basically we got some CPAs and kind of walked her through it. But, yeah, the not knowing that can really wreck a retirement plan for sure.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's huge. I think that's a lot of times people just, you don't know what you don't know, and that's definitely a huge to think about. Let's now kind of shift gears into, like our analogy we've been talking about of climbing the mountain, striving and accumulating money. Then you get to the top, and now you got to look down and get down to the bottom with decumulation and having enough money to live. What about the other aspect of, I've planned so well that we've got so much money, plenty of money to live past when I need it, but now we need to put a plan into place for legacy planning, transferring wealth to your heirs. What are some things that people need to think about with regard to taxes in that respect?
Oh, yeah. So, when was it? It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. Government did away with the where you're able to just keep rolling those qualified accounts, those tax deferred accounts, where you can keep rolling them from generation to generation. Actually, I think it's been longer. It's been almost 10 years. But now the law says that if it's not a spouse and you roll it, so say to your children, that $1 million, they have to start taking that income, they have to start taking those accounts and start liquidating those accounts over a 10-year period. So if it's
Wow.
a single person and they just got $1 million and they're 50 in their highest earning years, and they got to take out an extra $100,000 a year, what is that going to do to their taxes? I mean, they're probably in the 24%, an extra 100 grand drops them into the highest one.
Wow.
That could devastate them tax wise, and then that inheritance that you were planning on leaving a legacy to them for just gets eaten up in taxes. So
Yeah.
efficiently thinking about it, and there's a lot of strategies to do it where you can convert to Roth accounts or tax-free accounts, or even utilizing life insurance to help pay for any of those taxes, would be beneficial to them, especially if you talk about legacy planning. So yeah, planning, it all boils down. Plan, 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 plan. If you do not, you're just kind of hoping, and hope obviously is not a
Hope is
strategy.
not a strategy. As a famous book, famous quote. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, hope is
So
not a strategy.
another thing too, I would think is important is have a team of people that are specialists. So
Yeah.
if Adam Blain was saying, I can do it all, just come to me. Well, maybe you could do it all a little bit, but you're not going to be up on all of the intricate estate planning or taxes or legal or all of those. So talk a little bit about making sure that you've got a team of people that are contributing to all of those areas to really make sure you're making those right moves.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got around me within AAA Life Solutions. It's not just me sitting here. I'm not an estate attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA, but I do have a CPA on my team. I do have an estate attorney on my team, and we do talk to each other. So if I do have a question of what happens if we pull out of this account, what is that going to do? So I'll call up my CPA and I'll say, hey, what do you think? And I'll take his opinion, but I'm here sitting here as the person kind of running the show as well, to where I'm talking to each one and taking their advice and then relaying it in a nice, comprehensive way to our clients to be able to assure them that they're going forward and descending down that mountain safely and soundly for their retirement to last the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do have a big team in our corner to fight for you as well. Now, if you have CPAs or an attorney as well, I'm more than happy, which makes me unique, to even talk to them to get them on the same page. Because most of these times, these three people never talk to each other. They're not willing to talk to each other. They don't want to talk to the CPA or the estate attorney or the wealth advisor. They don't want to get in the same room. So that does make me unique as well, because I do want to have their input and their advice, because they're experts in their fields as well, and takes kind of a village. The old analogy, it takes a village to raise a child. Same thing with retirement. It takes a village to bring you down safely down the mountain as well. Multiple guys.
And if you're not on the same
things.
page, you need to be on the same page, or else you're like pulling on two ends of the same rope and
Exactly.
you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, tug of war, and you're just yanking on it, and you're not making any progress. And then that where you're just kind of standing still. That's not progress. That's actually going backwards. So
from your experience of working with clients, what have you seen as the biggest tax mistake that you've seen a retiree make in maybe not planning, and oops, that time bomb went off?
Yeah, I mean, the requirement minimum distributions is a big one. They're not planning for what that looks like, because they don't know what that looks like. They don't know how to. The average American can't even manage their own finances in the accumulation phase, or put together a sound budget, right? So project out taxes, project out what that's going to look. That's difficult for the average American. So you do need somebody that knows what they're doing to show you what are those going to do, and then if I do X, Y, Z, how that could look going into the future as well. That's a big one. And then also not planning for that spouse to pass away. Most people have the right idea. They want to, I can't remember the name of the movie, but where they both pass away together. Rarely that happens. Usually the women outlast the men by a number of years, and unfortunately the women kind of get the short end of the stick of trying to manage this all by themselves, when the guys have been doing this their whole married life. So definitely planning and involving your wife is also another Another thing, because she needs to be aware of when the man passes away, how are my taxes going to look? How are things going to look for me if he happens to pass away as well? I've talked to a number of ladies who have come back to me and saying, "Oh, my husband passed away. He's done everything, the finances and everything. I don't even know where stuff is." So just making
Wow.
sure she's involved in the whole process as well. Is
That's a
very
great point.
important.
We talked about longevity, like, how long will you live in retirement? Our lifespans are going longer, but you brought up a great piece of statistic there. Statistically, women are living longer than men. And statistically, women don't know where the money is, what's been going on. So maybe a gift that the man of the family can give to the woman would be involve them sooner so that they understand what's going on, and then make sure that your financial professional is factoring in the wife's longevity, right?
Oh, most definitely. Yes. And I was reading a statistic is that here in the near future, and for retirees, the women are going to be holding the majority of the money
Wow.
because all the guys are going to be passing on, especially with the baby boomer generation, is that there's just so many of them, and all the guys will be passing away more statistically sooner than the ladies. That the ladies are going to be the ones holding the majority of the money, so they need to be the ones that also need to be on the process and knowing how things are working as well.
Yes, 100%. Well, I'll tell you, this has been some real eye-opening points to bring up about taxes, and I love some of these things. It's like if you're aware of what could happen with these tax traps and time bombs, then you could put a plan into place. And like we said before, start planning well ahead of when you are planning for retirement, or well ahead of when some of these tax traps could be. So, Adam, if someone is interested in reaching out and connecting with you to say, hey, map out some of these potential tax traps and time bombs so I can have a good plan, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, always can reach us at our phone number at 901-508-2433, and always can look us up at on our website at AAA Life Solutions.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.